Okay, part 6. Woohoo! We're continuing. Now, here we have the Igbo culture, Igbo Akwu in the lower Niger River. This would be in East Nigeria, 25 miles southeast of the Niger River at Onitsha. This was called Great Igbo to distinguish it from all the other Igbo sites. This would be a major center. There was a lot of wealth here, residents of high status priest class or a king, and this place was the heart of their culture. It was abandoned suddenly, so the culture there was frozen. Bronze works were found here. They were found before World War II, but nothing could be done about them or examined until after the war, which would be then 20 years later after initially found. So the first is found in 1938 by Isaiah Anozi, digging a hole for a water tank. He found a bronze piece and he just piled them up by his house. Didn't think they were that important. And he even gave them away. In 1958, Bernard Fagg, director of Nigerian Federal Department of Antiquities, came to the dig at Ibu Akwu. And in 1959-1960, the dig was led by Thurston Shaw. There were 3 sites found: a storehouse or a shrine, a burial pit, and then a disposal pit. In these sites, they found potteries, bronzes, animal bones, and burnt materials. This is dating to the 9th century. There was highly decorated pottery objects, ivory tusks, beads, coppers, and bronzes. And later, I need you to pause this and I need you to copy that link and watch the little YouTube clip on the lost wax procedure. Okay, and then also it mentions that the bowl is kind of like shaped like a half cassava. So I wanted you to see what a cassava melon looked like. All right, here we have the bowl of the Ibu Akwu in Nigeria, 9th century. Again, found by Isaiah Anozi in 1938. It is again half calabash, slightly pinched at the center, geometric shapes throughout the entire piece. It was created using lost wax. It is a leaded bronze, and it had the same structures other bowls found. A single handle here, but very ornate surface. There are spirals on here, dots, so these circles, right? And they're separated then with these raised elements. The handle looks like a twisted rope and has 3 spiral knobs at each end. This piece was donated to a museum by F.W. Carpenter, who was a district commissioner for Akwa region in Nigeria. He visited the area in 1939, collected a few items, but then gave them to the museums in 1956. The Ife settlement in southwestern Nigeria. There's a city of Yoruba, and there were people in southwest Nigeria active between 12th and 15th century. They had a prosperous trade center, and there is a Yoruba myth that this was the center of creation of the world and of humanity. This land was created by the god Aduduwa, who was the ancestor of the first Yoruba king. This is still a center for religious practice, still seen also as a spiritual center of Yoruba culture. There are sacred shrines here, and kingship still continues. The concept of kingship in Ife. The king is also known as an Oni. His authority comes from the fact that he can trace his descent back to Oduduwa. Now, Oduduwa gave crowns to each of his kids, who then formed their own kingdoms. The numbers of the crown varies because then, some people would say, no, there were 10 crowns. No, 9, no, 11, because I'm a king. And each Oni or king has tried to trace his lineage back to one of those original crowns. The king or Oni only appears in Ife in public twice a year at the feasts of Oroshanla and Ogun. For symbols, the crown, of course, is very important to the king, but the face is supposed to be covered. It's dangerous for a king to open his mouth in public. Um, Supposed to, I don't know what the heck I was doing there. Head, hold, king, Ase. Oh, okay, okay. So in Ife culture, they believe that the head holds the king's Ase, or inner power. So you don't want to open up that mouth and let the inner power fly away. The face would be covered by veil or a hair, and often they would hold a fly whisk near the mouth. So here's a brass head in Yoruba in Ife, Nigeria, 12th to 14th century. Typical bronze sculpture. Ife is known for these bronze sculptures, first analyzed and described by Frank Willett, officer of the Nigerian Department of Antiquities. So Willett is to Ife studies as Fag is to Nok and Shaw to Igbo. The first group of bronzes were found in 1938. Crews were digging trenches at a construction site. This was one of 16 found at the Wumnomji compound. And it was a shock when people found these bronzes. They just didn't think Africans had that technology to create these types of pieces. No big deal about the terracotta heads. Those had been found before 1910 by German Lido Frobenius. But the bronzes are different because they take a great deal of technology and skill. However, Ife predates African metalwork. So this also kind of threw the history of what we thought we knew about Africa on his head. Again, created using lost wax technique. This head is slightly under life size, and it would show an oni in regalia, would have a decorative crown, and crown's very important, which is a drum-shaped element, and you notice it would have these beads on its head. Two conical objects rest, one here, from the forehead and above. Below, you'll see this portion projecting behind the ears, and that would be the back portion of this crown. There are traces of red and black paint. The face is realistic yet also idealized, and the eyes would really be too small for a human face this size. They are stylized in that they are almond shaped. Aren't any brows incised, so it's thought perhaps they had been painted on. And again, elements of red and white paint across the face. Nostrils are flared. Lips are full, mouth open. Again, a hollow center. Grooves on the neck suggest creases. There are also various linear effects, these lines coming down, and punched holes, and vertical incisions to represent that the face would have been covered by a veil or hair. 12 of the 13 Wanmonji bronze heads have the same details. Also, you see these puncture holes around the lips. It's thought that perhaps a beard would have been anchored here, as they did find glass beads at the site. Holes in the neck. It is likely that this item would have been attached to another object, maybe a carved wooden body. It would have been used in rituals and funerary rites. And this shows great technical skill and artistic achievement. Okay, the Benin Kingdom in southern Nigeria. This is one of the major West African powers up to late 19th century. It was founded in the 11th century at the capital of Edo, which is now Benin City, by the Edo people, and they had been known as Igodomigodo. In the 15th century, we have the arrival of the Portuguese, and they established an empire. The Benin had power through military. The king offered protection to neighboring groups, and they would give him tax dollars and local natural resources. The kingdom maintained authority through commerce between Europe and inland African people, so they had a monopoly which would later be challenged by the Britons in the late 19th century with colonialism. So again, we see Benin here, Ife here. Benin bronze work. Edo created bronzes since the 13th century and reached the pinnacle in the in two periods. One is mid 14th and the other is mid 16th century, largely in brass and again using lost wax technique. Westerners again could not believe Africans were capable of such work, and this is from a racist perspective, thought that they could only do primitive art. Bronzes were mostly used to decorate a king's or oba's palace, as this would be the stage for the king's power representative. It illustrated rule in the profusion and quality of imagery. Of the Benin bronzes, there were more than 1,000 commemorative plaques and sculptures from the royal palace of the Benin Kingdom. They were looted from the Edo and removed to a British museum during the British Benin Punitive Expedition of 1897. At the plaque, the Edo people of Nigeria, mid-16th to 17th. This is a solid piece, and it was at the King's Palace of Benin City. It was hung on pillars by nails, and these would be throughout the palace's decorations to show the king's wealth, power, and character of the king, made of copper alloy. And it is similar to another piece that can be found in the Smithsonian. Here, there are two musicians and a page, musician here, page holding a sword. The central figure would be the king, obviously larger, holding in costume and holding symbolic implements. Then we have these half figures up at the top. These would represent the Portuguese figures who were involved in trade. The interesting thing is that the Portuguese would have, through their trade, provided the king with the raw materials that were then used to create this work. So this central piece is in high relief, and here we have hierarchical representation, where the figure that has more power would be represented as a taller, bigger figure. And the Brits, again, stripped the king and the people of these objects as punishment for something they had done earlier. And they took, again, all these pieces away and put them into British museums. The Asante people of Ghana, also known as Ashanti, was a significant and powerful cultural group in West Africa. It spanned present-day central and southern Ghana. It was founded in 1695 by King or Ashantani Osei Tutu. Their economy revolved around gold and slaves. The government was centralized, and the king would have chiefs and advisors, and they believed in the golden stool. This is the main symbol of the king, and they believed it was descended from heaven when Osei Tutu assumed power. It is a military culture, and they warded off European rule for a great while, longer than most. They fought the Brits between 1823 and 1900 in the Anglo-Asante Wars. Then they gained independence in 1934 before the rest of Ghana did, which was in 1957. All right, kente cloth. The most recognizable cultural product of Africa is the kente cloth. Kenten means basket in Asante. They are also called enwintoma or women cloth. There is an origin legend. Two hunters were out in the forest and saw a spider spinning a web. They watched it very carefully. Then they came back to the village and started weaving their own. And they used black and white raffia fiber. It's an example of raffia fiber right here. Kente was originally produced by Asante and Iwi weavers solely in black and white. Today, you can see them in bright colors. Colors came into use through natural dyes. There were synthetic compounds later used. You will see geometric patterning in kente cloth, squares, rectangles, diamonds, zigzags, and they use a loom. A vertical thread is called a warp, and a horizontal thread is called a weft. They make these strips of cloth and then they sew them together. The first kente cloths are made in the 17th and 18th century solely in silk, so that would have been very expensive. It was a precious import, and only the king would be wearing this cloth, so it became a symbol of the king's power. Today, they are made in a variety of natural and synthetic materials, so they are now very affordable and accessible. So the function and symbolism, again, originally created for the king in ceremonial context, was used in costuming as the body would be draped in yards of this cloth, and there would be a liberal use of gold and yellow. Colors represent different things. Black represents maturity and spirituality and Africa. Blue, harmony and peace. Green, obviously harvesting, planting, politics. Gold, royalty and wealth. And red would be blood, sacrifice, and politics. Interesting, politics. Patterns were associated with proverbs. Today, this cloth can be seen throughout Ghana and the world. It's a popular souvenir item, and it's also used as a symbol for Black power. The piece that we have is currently held by a Newark museum in New Jersey. It is made of rayon. It has repeated vertical and horizontal patterns. They're gold, orange, red, green, blue, black. There are these flat orange squares that can be seen, and they're going to add this horizontal look to it. See right here. Then there are thinner vertical at the right in red. It's evenly decorated and it's used to create a visual rhythm. And that's really all I had to say about that. Okay, that's it.